Do you mind starting with it?
No.
Awesome. We'd like to hear that first.
All right. Welcome, everyone. Find a comfortable seat or don't. It's up to you.
Or not.
Master Christian unfortunately couldn't be here. It was a last-minute life thing that we were like, go do your life. That's more important. So Yaja and Aaron and I will be filling in and hopefully giving some useful feedback that will be really helpful. How this will work is each group is going to perform their piece. We'll give some feedback and maybe some hints for working on some things they can do to improve it a little bit more. We'll have them sing or play again. Possibly not the whole piece, but possibly the whole piece. And then we'll go on to the next group. The idea of a master class is hopefully that the audience learns as well as the performers as we go through this feedback back and forth process. We have 3 groups today, so we've got about 20 minutes for each group, and we don't want to start too late. So to begin with, we have the Roaring Wastrels. And what will you be playing for us today?
We'll be doing a piece by Ludwig Sandsvall called Ach Elslang. It's sort of an unrequited love from faraway Princess Elslang. Sorry, I can't be with you.
Please go ahead.
I liked what you did with having both the instruments and the vocals. I think that can be a difficult thing to integrate well, and I thought it kind of blended together. one thing with the instruments that I would consider, and I know you have a member missing, so this might be why you did it, but with the tenor recorder, is playing an octave above where the tenor voice would normally be singing. So that can make some things sound a little odd. So I don't know if that was because the person who normally was saying it couldn't be here today or not, but when you're having instruments, especially recorders, play with voices, that's something to consider. So a lot of times, if I'm doubling a part, I think it can sound better to double one of the outside parts, or to have, for example, like lower voices and then the high recorders playing, so there's not like mixing of intervals in the inner octave. One thing I wanted to talk about was the singing, with some decisions that you made with regard to cutoffs. And this is a decision you can make, and I'm not saying that you have to do it this way, but so for example, in measure 7, where the soprano has a dotted half note and everyone else has a half note and a quarter note, I think it sounds nice if everybody kind of cuts off at the same time, even though you have the dotted half note continuing on. I think there are some other places where you have kind of a similar thing, but I like the way it sounds when everybody cuts off. I think it should be a decision that you make consciously to do or not.
Do you want to have them try that?
Sure. Why don't you just sing like the first phrase up to measure 8. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you like that?
I'll opine. I like it, however, singing the bass line at that point, I have to short my half note to begin with to be able to breathe. And so I think if the soprano doesn't cut off with me, it kind of covers that. But that's just, you know, how I hear it. I think I would agree. It probably has a lot to do with the combination of voice and instruments and octaves as well. Did cutting off seem weird for you?
I don't know, I guess in general what I want to convey is you don't have to be chained to the notes that are on the page when you make your decisions.
And the reason that you gave is a totally valid reason to make the decision that you made.
Yeah.
Sure. So, make sure that you're loud.
Can you guys hear us talking
Yeah.
way back?
Yeah.
there?
Yeah.
Great.
Great.
Good.
Okay. But I should make sure that I put to everyone.
Right.
So overall, I really like, if you're gonna pick one, I think the tenor line tends to be a good one to put on instruments.
Yeah, I actually told you.
Okay. Surprising. Or I can.
You can get up and stand.
How do I get to everybody? Okay, I'm gonna stand right here. Okay, so, I like having the tenor on the recorder. If you're gonna pick one, I think that's a good one to do. In general, I think it sounds all right. So, one thing I noticed is that when you were singing, and overall your singing was really good, it was really in tune, I thought. However, it was very like, we are all standing here facing the audience, and you didn't really interact with each other very much, and I found that when my groups interact with each other, it just automatically sounds better. And I think with this kind of music, when it's one on a part and you were singing it in your living room, it's for each other. So why don't you try doing one of the verses, I don't know, pick a verse, and look at each other. Maybe the first one, it's probably the one you're most familiar with, so most comfortable getting onto the page.
So be friendly with the lady.
Yeah. Pretend you're in your living room, pretend you're at rehearsal, and you're all just having fun, and you have it more or less memorized, and you're just...
Well, that means I'm gonna have to sit on this couch.
With an adult beverage.
With an adult.
All best practices on Monday.
That's what's wrong with If I can carry meat, I can bring it Wednesday.
Should I say it now? We sometimes call ourselves the Roaring Wastrels. Just for fun.
Is that how we roll?
So we're, these are funny. We're all about the silly. All right.
So,
ready?
first verse?
Singing. Okay, do y'all have our keys still? I'm sorry I didn't check.
That was really good. Yeah, that made a huge difference. Not only was it more interesting for us to watch you look at each other, but automatically you started being more expressive with your face and with your body. Like you especially. That was just wonderful. That was really great.
Also, I found that it helps with nerves, like, because then you remember, oh, I've got teammates, and I don't have to look at the audience, I can look at my friends.
No, I was just gonna say, it sounded like the first two times, I mean, you started singing and then they joined in, but this time you all started on the same mark, so
Right.
that, I personally found that more enjoyable, more like, oh, cool.
That's a really good point.
A more connected beginning.
Yeah.
One thing I heard in this piece that I think are so great, this piece is so homo-rhythmic, so a lot of the time you're singing the same thing at the same time, but every so often there will be just a beautiful moving line in just one of the parts. I would really like to hear you bring those out more. So can you, do you all have a pencil or something approximating a pencil here?
Yeah, that
Can you look, just take like 30 seconds or a minute and find the spots in your line, and tenor recorder, you can do the same thing. That you just think you are the coolest thing happening at that minute.
And since the recorder doesn't have as much dynamics, part of it is pulling it back a little to let other people stand out. So look at where other people have interesting things too, not just you.
All right, what I would like you to do now is sing through that verse again. After we recover the pencil. Thank you. Sing through the verse one more time.
do you want us to do a different?
I would love you to do a different verse. Your choice. Options.
What are we doing? First two, just for
Do
the
number 2, and I would like you to sing it where you would normally sing it. Sing everything at like 85% of that, and then sing the parts where you are awesome, bring those out. And hopefully, what I'm hoping is that you'll hear where everyone else is doing something cool.
Das bringt mir große Schmerzen, es solle nicht stehen, predigt von ganzem Herzen, was ich groß ungefähr, predigt von ganzem Herzen, was ich groß ungefähr.
Good job. Do you know what I heard that time? That time I heard, and the things that I did not notice the first time, there's so much imitation in this piece that I hadn't noticed the first time that really comes out when you hear one voice to it and then another voice to it. It sounds really great. Thank you, guys. Would you like to perform the other one for us? We don't have a whole lot of time, but we can.
Maybe we should do like not all, like, do you want to do all the verses?
Oh, we were only gonna do verse 1, an instrumental version, and then verse
We
2.
can short it.
We
Yes.
can just do
Yeah,
verse
just
1
do-
and the instrumental, would
Yeah.
you like that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
just one through the instrumental.
So we're doing first introduction, verse 1, and then the instrumental, and stop.
Oh, okay. All right.
Right.
must part, parting though I absent mourn. Absence can no joy impart, joy once fled cannot return. While I live, I needs must love. Love lives not when hope is gone. Now at last despair doth prove, love divided loveth none. Sad despair doth drive me hence, this despair unkindness sends. If that parting me offends, it is she which then offends.
We're going to get a couple things really fast. One thing that you do very well, especially on this piece I noticed, but I noticed it on that other piece too, is that when you're playing your recorders together, your entrances and cutoffs are always together. They just sound great. I would like to hear that transferred into your singing. Your singing is not bad, but there are a couple places where it's just not as clean as the recorders. One that I really especially noticed is the very opening word of the piece, now. Part of the difficulty of the letter N is that it has its own pitch, it's voiced. So sometimes the tendency, especially if you're not confident, is to go, no, like you're testing out. And I heard that happen a little bit, and I'm not sure, I think partly because N lets you do that. Can we try that, just that entrance, just like the first two measures, just starting it together, look at each other and start together.
Can I have a J?
Now I needs must part.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so I'd like to talk a little bit about intonation on the recorders. Your intonation vocally, I think, is pretty good, and I'd like to, can you match that on recorders? Intonation on recorders can be really tricky, especially when you're in a spot, an unfamiliar spot, because you aren't hearing quite the same thing that you usually hear. I did an exercise actually in the beginner recorder track that I'd like to have you try. And I mean, of course, you probably know the harder you blow, it makes the note sharp. And sometimes the tendency is I can't quite hear what I'm playing, so I'm going to play harder, which makes it sharper.
Or I want to be louder because I'm performing, and
Right.
if I can't hear myself, then how can the audience hear me? And
So
it's just
what I
this
want you to do is try to use the softest breath pressure that you can, and still get like a solid note out of it, and just trust that you're playing the right thing, and trust that everybody else knows what they're doing. And it was a really impressive difference in the beginner track, and I'd like to see what that does for you. And I'm not saying you should perform it that way, but it might be interesting to listen what it does to your intonation. So just maybe the first four measures.
is articulation for the recorders. So you know the words of the song, so you can use that as a guidance for which notes are supposed to be stronger and weaker. And in general, I mean, this is also a dance piece. It's a galliard.
Yeah, the frog galliard.
Galliard.
Yep.
So it follows a very standard rhythm. It's like strong, weak, strong, weak, strong. So you can use different tonguings for that. So you can use a harder T and then D. So like ta, da, ta, where you just think strong, weak, strong. So try that for the first few measures. And also think of the words too. That will probably also help. Yeah, that takes some practice. But
It does.
Yeah.
We'll have to do it a couple times.
Yeah. I can hear the churning in your head.
Smoke coming out of the ear.
On the notes, you can hear the words.
It's like a Sesame Street clip where you can see the.
Did I have a thought bubble to sound?
Yes.
I've done some of this singing and playing, and what you're doing with switching the parts is incredibly hard, and you're doing it really nicely.
We're swapping clefs, aren't we? Wait, what are you playing?
I'm swapping clefs.
You're swapping clefs, I'm swapping clefs.
So, yeah, so
And
you're
swapping
doing that very
lines.
nicely, and it's seamless.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, really good job.
Well, thank you so much for performing for us.
That this is the first time I've ever performed, this group has ever performed.
Oh my gosh.
To a seated audience.
Well,
Normally,
it's a
our
dancing
job
audience,
is to be
yeah.
a dancing audience or ambient music. This is the first time.
all right.
Would it help if I
Introduce
dance?
yourself and your piece.
Sure. We'll do a little trade, yeah. So, yeah, would you like to sing now? All right. So we are the Pippins. We're from Ayrton, which is Chicagoland. And the piece we're doing is called Pulcra es amica me. It's mea, sorry. And it's a Palestrina piece, and the text is from the Song of Solomon. So it's a biblical text, but it's romantic. So the text is, you're beautiful and lovely, you're beautiful as Jerusalem, but you're as terrible as an army arrayed with banners. Turn your eyes away from me, or I will be overcome.
Are we making roads?
Maybe we should rotate that way.
Yeah.
And then push that back to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go.
You can move whenever you like. You can get that chair out of there, maybe.
Yeah, because we need to make a seat.
Am I blocking?
We need to see it up.
My shot's gone. You've covered the whole arc. But
This is okay for us.
I'm sure it'll hear you, so.
I should look at this one.
Pulcra es amica Ordina
Okay. So there's a lot in this piece that's really nice. It sounds beautiful blended together. Particularly, you have multiple people on one part, and it sounds like one voice most of the time. So that's really nice. I think something that would be really nice is to have more, and I think you might have been doing this, but I'm not sure, emphasizing certain voices at certain times when you have a really interesting line. Because otherwise, I mean, Palestrina was all about, like, you can do polyphony and understand the music.
Right.
And so, like, making something stick out, I think, is kind of in that vein. So I'm trying to think, well, look through your part and pick one that you think is particularly, I don't know if you guys notice one that's...
I have something I want to say, sort of along that vein, sort of related. So in the homophonic sections, I thought you were all blending really nicely. In the polyphonic sections, I'm going to single you out, Yuri, because usually the tenor line, which admittedly has a lot of interesting stuff, was dominating everyone else. And so part of that is Yuri listening to what the rest of the group is doing, but part of it is, like Yaj is saying, when you have interesting stuff, make sure that you're competing with him over there.
Yeah, particularly the soprano line. In general, like I'm thinking of Secret Chervers, like the soprano line is like the one that's doing the thing, and I think in this piece it's similar. So actually there's, I don't know, another part is like contrasting issues, but
Well, let's work on that, because I have an exercise that I think will help
Okay.
with this issue. Do you all have pencils?
No.
Do we have, can I collect pencils for them to use?
Please, sir. Before you go on, I just have something. Hey, you guys. I'm having a lot of trouble hearing you in this room. Can we get closer when we sing? I was struggling.
Yeah. Change your, sometimes just changing formation makes a huge difference.
This room was way different than other rooms.
What I would like you to do when you get a pencil
Yeah.
is, you probably don't have time to do the whole piece, but let's do the first page and a half just up through Sicut Jerusalem before
Yeah.
Terribilis, okay?
Okay.
And on every phrase that you have in your part, put a star or a heart or something on top of the note that it's going to. So every phrase, as we know, goes to a note and comes back down. So where's the high point of that phrase? And you don't have to agree with your neighbor.
Well,
The ones on the same
Yeah,
part,
okay.
probably gotta agree.
Not according to my goal director. But right now, you don't need to agree with your neighbor.
So.
all right. One moment, please. Some of them are already marked, it turns out.
Oh, that's okay.
So
When
many
you're done with the
surprises.
pencil, go ahead and set it on the table behind you because you're going to use your hand.
Oh, this is the.
Oh, I can't wait.
All right.
Oh, there it is. Oh, look, there it is.
One thing that's really weird about singing, and I don't know why this works the way it works, probably a psychologist could tell you better, but a lot of time things that we do visually or things that we do with our hands or body can affect how we sing. And a lot of times, for example, moving your hand down helps you sing a higher note because you feel like it's lower.
Mm.
moving your hand up, things like that. So for this exercise, we're gonna try pointing toward, we're gonna try moving our hands with our breath. So this will help our breath travel where we want it to go. So as you're singing this, I want you to take one hand. If you hold your music in one hand and use your other hand, and you can, I like to point with my thumb because I feel like this motion makes me feel like I'm getting lots of strength and pushing it. I want you to push to that point of the high note and then bring it on back, like in a circle. Don't make your arm real tense, but make sure there's solid motion. Don't go jerky, because that will happen in your breath too. All right, so go ahead and sing from the beginning and move your hands.
Pulchra amicam meas, amicam meas, pulchra amicam
Did it do something?
It was
I can't tell anymore.
great. Good work. Thank you.
Oh.
What was the next thing you wanted to say, Aaron? I know you. Or Monique, you were the one who was going to start to say something else.
Right.
Yaja, I'm so sorry.
Whatevs.
Right. So I'm noticing there's timid entrances on the, or not timid, but like soft entrances for each of the people coming in. Is that a conscious decision? Okay. So, two things. One.
I'll speak for that.
I think that when you come in, like everybody's watching the other one, you need to draw people. You need to be like, hey, watch me. I'm the one having the melody now. Particularly the sopranos, because I always feel like that's supposed to be like really in there. And then the other thing is there's a few parts with like melismas that should really be emphasized, I think. So like in measure 8, 7 and 8, the altus line has this thing that's really exciting. So like everybody else should back off and let them stand out. And then at the end of the page, the sopranos have their thing, and like that's a very quintessential Palestrina thing, I think. So like everyone should hear you. You're singing out. They're watching you.
Maybe we can try another exercise with that. So, you know, I think it's good to be in an arc, but try. I wouldn't recommend this during performance, but try actually stepping forward
Be a soloist.
when you have an entrance or you have an interesting thing your part's doing.
So the two things to do is when you've got the interesting part, step forward. And actually, I think even when you're starting, step forward. You know, give the audience a signal for the moment that like you're singing now. They need to watch you.
Yeah, and step back when you're done, or
when you're
otherwise
done,
we'll be
Or like when the
Menacing.
when the
Too
next
menacing.
person comes.
Rapidly closing in on us.
So just that same section, if you want to do that same.
That's perfect.
Pulchras amicam meas, amicam meas, pulchras amicam meas, amicam meas, amicam meas, pulchras amicam meas.
Stop singing with your head, stop singing.
That was dramatic change.
Helps you understand the music.
I wish I could have got the whole shot.
Let's do that. Thank you guys. That's super interesting.
Oh, that was really awesome. It gave me goosebumps. The entrance is coming in. It's so much stronger.
That's good.
One thing first. I want to, we have not talked about this because it's not a thing to fix, it's a thing that you're doing awesome.
Hey.
Your articulation in some of these places, like on the Terribilis, that's awesome. It is very expressive, and it just really helps us understand the difference between this like desire to look at her, but fear, you know, of the same time. So that was awesome, and I wanted to make sure that we complimented that you on that. We would really like to hear this just performed again.
Sure.
Keeping the stuff in mind we did with that.
Yeah, but not actually doing it.
Yeah.
I think it's a little. I think it'll get a little fakey if we do it the whole thing.
Maybe in your mind.
In our minds. Just, I couldn't hear you over there at all, so let's be real close together.
Stand closer together. It's hot in here, and
It's, yeah,
It is,
I don't
but
want to, but
that's
I-
right.
it's something with the fans.
Yep, that's
Thank
right. Do
you.
not worry about me.
Pulchras amica
We got a lot to do, thank you so much. That's excellent.
Thank you so much for performing for us. All right. Court and country, you're up. Thank you. Mr. Sondland, would you like your
Oh, yeah, I'm right on mine.
I don't know where they are. The room? I've got a traffic jam. Whenever you get up, if you would just introduce yourselves and then tell us what you're singing. Sorry. Normal as it is.
We are Court and Country. We are also from the Ayrton area. We are Ayrton North. Our group just passed its 5-year anniversary, so we're very happy about that. We are singing Cara Mia Donna, which is a 14th century Ars Nova piece by Francesco Landini, and this is on the topic of courtly love. So someone who is ignored by their true love, but is fine with suffering as long as his love appreciates how deeply he suffers because it shows the depth of his love. Yeah. It's courtly love. That's how it goes.
We really like Landini.
Who could not?
And I wanted to compliment you on how you took a piece that has a lot of words that are kind of standard, and you made them mean something, and that was really nice. Thank you. I have a question for the audience. tell me what the form of that piece was? Anyone know?
It was sort of a rondo.
And then it had parts that came back. Yep.
It
Thank
is
you.
entirely related.
You heard ABBA?
Yeah.
Yes.
Assuming an A.
ABBAA. Yes, it's a ballata. And so what I would like to hear you do is let's find some way that we can communicate to every single person in the audience, besides the people who know balladas. Balladas rule! They do, they're great. And it's a very common medieval form. You have an A melody, you have a B melody, and you sing A, B, B, A, A. But this song is so long and so complicated that gets lost. And that repetition structure that gives us a roadmap so that, when we're listening, we feel like, yeah, we know what's going on. Sometimes when it's so long and so complicated, we just hear music. For a long time, we're like,
So what do you suggest to set it off? A big Luftpause between each section?
That could be done. I mean, I would think that would not be tasteful to do after every section, but perhaps before the band would be at the end. Something I would suggest is making each section have a different character from the other sections. So you're like, this B section is going to be intimate, and this B section is going to be a little bit more declamatory because we've said it once. And now we're gonna be a little bit more confident about what we're saying.
Okay, I think we decided that the volta is like the peak of the whole piece.
Okay.
We tried to make that stand out.
But
I don't know if it came across to you guys or not.
It came across as different to us. We could tell that I thought, wow, they're being really expressive in this part. So I could tell that part was important to you.
But you want the A-B nature to stand out more, not just the particular section.
Yes, for example, I want each of the 5 sections to sound like itself, so that we can hear that there are 5 parts rather than a long fantasy. Can you sing?
4 actually.
Well,
because there's the A and the A that are exact repeats of.
Right, but I'm counting
so
them as
want it to
different.
be-
But
because they're not adjacent. It's,
right. It doesn't.
Well,
the
that's
exact
the
number
thing to
doesn't
think
matter.
about, whether
Yes.
you want the absolute repeat to be the same as itself,
Yes.
or yet again new and different.
And that's a choice you can make. What I would like you to do is huddle, 20 seconds. You're gonna sing B and B for me, the 2 B sections.
Okay, so B and C.
B and C for me. And decide how you're gonna do them differently.
Okay, Bob.
Okay. Be really quiet so we can't hear you because we're gonna guess what you did.
Okay, so before it goes.
I hear you.
I'm feeling it in one.
Yeah, Roaring Wastrels.
Really one.
Well, yeah, there's like
Right, yeah, I did.
Yeah. Be complex.
All right.
I know we did. D, F sharp, A.
Ready?
Are you ready? We're ready.
All right.
D
sections were.
Okay.
And it was more interesting to listen to because there's more difference. It was really good work. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Did you identify what we whispered we were doing?
No.
We
I don't know. What were
tell
your,
us
what were your ideas?
what was your thought?
So the first section, he's a lot more pleading with his lady. I can't grant this to you. What can I do about this? That sort of thing. And the second, he's talking about the pain in his soul, and we wanted to get. I said, be complex. We wanted to get both the pain and the frustration.
I think pain and frustration. I mean, not something that was painful and frustration. But listen,
You're tapping and a floor wax.
like the strength of the feelings really came through.
We were
I'm
pained
having
and
feelings,
frustrated,
guys.
not painful and frustrated. Okay, because in the 14th century, what you're supposed to get, you're not supposed to get each word painted like in later Renaissance stuff. You're supposed to get the mood and the emotion across.
Yeah.
So that's a big help to think of each
Yeah.
section that way.
Yeah.
That's it. Let's move on to something else. So
Yes.
one thing that we have frequently found to be challenging in this kind of music is intonation, especially at cadences, because it's almost always this open, pure interval. And one thing that we have found really helpful is just to go note by note and identify where you are singing the same note as another part, but in a different octave.
We understand this
Have been
concept.
circled everywhere, so
Good.
I'm not
That's
that we
good.
need to
Good.
worry
Good.
more.
Good.
Yeah.
You're already doing that, so pay attention to where you have it,
Okay.
and really be sure to listen for that. So I won't talk about, we won't practice that now, but really be sure to pay attention.
And you'll notice that it's usually like the outer parts have
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
and then it's
She,
like,
the
yeah.
kidney being
Right,
a
it's all over the
because
place.
that's how it ends up
Yeah.
when you
Right.
draw
I
it.
mean,
Yeah.
it's the thing.
So really pay attention to that, because I think that it will dramatically improve the intonation if you're really paying attention. The other thing that I want to talk about is rhythm, which is fundamental to Landini. And
Like, we can write rhythm. Let's
I know,
experiment with
basically.
all the ways we can write rhythm.
And one of the things that happens a lot is there's a question, is it in 3? Is it in 2? Sometimes one of the parts will feel like it should be in 3, while the other part is in 2. And I think this piece has it maybe less than some other Landini
Yeah.
pieces, but something you did in the addition I think makes it especially difficult to notice where that will happen. So look at, for example, measure 30 in the soprano line. If you can see that we have like 3 groups of 2/8 notes. And so the fact that it's beamed that way, the editor, in this case you, has made a decision that that measure will be in 3.
Actually, I think I may have followed my original. I don't remember for sure, but yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
some editor made that decision. And I think it's a question, do you want that measure, all the parts, to be in 3? And if I were doing it, I would probably say no, I don't, because I think it's more interesting and more characteristic of Landini to have one part in 3, while the other is emphasizing something more in 2. So just to demonstrate what I mean, so like, the rhythm that you have is like da-da-da-da-da-da, but you could do da-da-da-da-da-da, and that's just as valid. And that's something you probably have to go back and think about and work on, but we might.
I will
do
say
a
a
large
large part of this piece, if you're looking at the tenor, is solidly in 3, but
No,
as
it
we're
is.
moving to the cadence,
Yeah.
we want to have the
I
tenor
think-
and the soprano
I think the
contrast with each
soprano
other.
has a lot more decisions to make. The other thing that I'd like to see you do is instead of conducting it in 3, I mean, it was a pretty fast 3. I think that you could do it in 1. So just like dum ba da dum ba da 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 dum ba da 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 da.
Maybe a class earlier this morning?
I will say I find it really hard to conduct in 1. It turns out to be such a slow one that I have a hard time, but I can work on it.
Yeah, let's try that. The nice thing about it that is that it gives you the freedom to be in 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Right. I understand the whole reasoning behind it. I
Right.
just know I have a hard time with it.
I'm not saying that it's easy. I'm just saying let's try it. So let's just start the A section and pay attention to places where you could do that measure in 2, especially the soprano line. Maybe actually let's. I think the B section has maybe more of those. There aren't a whole lot in this piece, to be honest.
Since it's a volata rather than a madrigal, it tends to have less of that stuff going on.
But there is some. Let's do the A section and just pay attention and see what you can do. So and I'll direct. So what was it you doing? That was about your speed, right?
Yeah.
So dum ba da dum ba da.
Okay, question though, if you want the sopranos to be creative, we're 2 different people and we may not be creative. But
That's
at the
okay.
same
For right
time,
now, that's
whatever.
For right now, if you have to err
Find it
on
out.
the side of doing the measure like in a more of a 2 feel. If you could, it's like da 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 da. Also, these places where you have this sort of syncopated rhythm. So like instead of da 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 dum. I think I wasn't hearing quite as much of that, but if you do like da 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 dum, it's another rhythmic choice you can make. So try making those choices and see how it goes. So here's your.
I'm not sure where.
This is the okay.
I have
go
more
for it.
experience with directing. Okay, let's try this. Dum. Is that good?
I was trying to figure it out, sorry.
That's okay.
So it's, yeah.
We're used to one in very different types of music, not this one.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sorry
so
for the-
this is the down, up, down, 2, 3, 1, 2.
Ba da 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 da.
But it gives you, and you notice like the goal then becomes, I need to fit this stuff in this 1, instead of like, I need to have everything.
I think that gave it a
specific
lot
place.
more forward motion, which I think helps.
I felt lighter too.
Yeah.
And even though that was a slower tempo that we've been moving towards.
Oh, that's an interesting point.
Yeah, and I don't think this needs to go super fast.
One of the biggest comments we got at regionals was, do it twice that fast, and I've been resisting that. And we've been doing it much slower than we performed here, but.
Yeah. I think it's nice slower because it lets you really bring out those interesting
Right.
rhythms.
And I was going to comment that it is a dance. He's known for
Well,
having
lots
these
of
dance like
dance,
and so
yeah.
you could. I think you should do what serves the music. So whatever sounds best, that's what you should do.
Yeah.
And what sounds best on your choir may not sound best for everyone.
And one thing, we did it fast so that we could spend less energy on breathing and more energy on having phrases rather than expressing, rather than, okay, where can I breathe? Okay, where can I breathe? Okay, where can I breathe?
And that Landini is awful about that. Landini's like, I don't care if you breathe. Just like, only, what are you mortals doing?
When I play the organ, the guys in the back with the pillows take care of
But
all
again,
that.
with going faster, it's a lot easier to go faster when you're just increasing this, instead of going,
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Right now, we're trying to actually conduct less
Right.
altogether.
Right.
Well, thank you so much for performing for us.
Yeah.
Hopefully you have really good. Does anyone here have any comments or anything that we are really late? Yes.
It was really nice when people were more or less off music and were looking up.
Agreed.
That is always nice.
That's a useful comment for all three groups. Thank you so much. Enjoy your next classes.